This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and as you can see, I am not home right now, but that does not mean that the content stops. Now, I did end up so busy that I could not find time to do my final 53-man roster prediction, but I'm going to keep y'all updated with everything that's going on with the whole roster cuts and everything like that. First of all, this video is sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, but we're here to talk about a lot of things that have gone down even before, because the roster cuts are due 4 p.m. But even before then, you have teams cutting good players that we may want to sign, like wide receiver Noah Brown or cornerback Farley. We're going to talk about both of those guys extensively in this video. Also, apparently the Washington Commanders are trying to trade Stromberg, Cole Turner, and John Ridgeway. And they also already cut Martavis Bryant, Sam Hartman, and many others. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Appreciate y'all for supporting. Even when I'm not at home, y'all still pull up for the videos. That is love. Much love for that, man. I'm going to keep y'all updated on everything. Of course, I will be back home definitely by the time we have that regular season game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I will be live streaming that like I always stream every regular season game. So make sure you pull up for that. And instead of wasting more of y'all time, let's go ahead and dive into what you came here for. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so the very first cut, or at least the one that was like the first one that was announced, was the Davon Davis cut, the wide receiver. That's a really interesting one too, because he started camp really hot. I mean, he was out there getting first team reps with the starters and things like that. And then I guess his role just slowly diminished over time. Other people have maybe stepped up. I don't believe he just started to play worse. I'm assuming the other guys around him played better. And then he just started to get more and more demoted, I guess. Or maybe him going out there with the first team was just like let's throw him out there and see how he handles himself. And it looked like he was making plays. So I thought that like a month or two ago, you couldn't have told me that Davon Davis didn't at least have somewhat of a shot. But as of recently, like the past couple of weeks, I haven't heard his name brought up, probably if any, at all. Preseason game, training camp, whatever. So, I mean, I guess things kind of ended up where we expected him. Because before training camp started, I thought Davon Davis, I thought he didn't really have much of a shot. Then we got to a certain point early on in training camp where he was catching passes from Jaden Daniels against the starting team defense. But now we're pretty much back where we started. And then we started to get announcements about the Commanders trying to trade a bunch of former players, man, because this is crazy. This is really crazy because I would argue that a couple of these guys that they're trying to trade right now are better than some of the guys that they're projected to keep. Like, I feel like some of the guys that we're trying to trade are better than some of the guys that they're holding on to this roster that they could be trading or cutting or whatever. I mean, like, first up, Cole Turner. Now, I wouldn't say the previous statement I just made applies to him about, like, us trying to trade him, and there's, like, a guy that's worse on our roster right now. The Cole Turner one kind of makes sense. And I feel like this is just like try to trade him before you cut him anyway, because they're probably going to end up cutting him. Maybe they'll try to bring him back to practice squad, but I feel like Cole Turner is one of those guys they're comfortable with just letting them go. It is what it is. And they're just basically trying to scrap for any sort of value they can get in return. Even if it's just a 7th round pick, let's get something for them rather than just cutting them for free for another team to get for absolutely nothing in return. Shouts out to Sam Fortier. He brings up a good point. He said this is smart, but have to wonder how strong this market will be. It'd be a win for the Commanders to even get a late round pick. I completely agree. If we can get anything for Cole Turner, I would be shocked, but I would also be very happy. If we can at least get a 7th round pick in return, I would love that. As a draft guy, as like a GM, I'm more naturally a general manager than I am a coach, than I am a player. So as many draft picks as we can get, I'm always happy. I'm always for that. It's just that gamble. But I just don't think he's shown you enough. I mean, with the drop passes, joint practices, preseason games, he's improved as a blocker, has improved mightily as a blocker, actually. Never thought he would become this good as a blocker at any point in his career. And within like his first 3-4 seasons, he's already this good at blocking. That is a huge plus as far as especially like trade value wise, because he projects as potentially like a dual threat tight end once he can start to catch the ball more consistently, man. But shouts out to Ben Standig because he pointed this out. from his 53-man article that he wrote from a 53 projection like a week or two ago, he said Cole Turner is another player being made available. His point was they are also open to trading players away. In addition to Jahan Dotson, Washington also has informed other teams about possible redundancies at defensive tackle, safety, and tight end. Basically, their point is we have a lot of guys that basically do the same thing that are about around the same level of good. We might as well trade one away if we can from each of those position groups to potentially get some value back in return. Again, rather than releasing one of these guys to just end up another team picking them up for free instead of giving us something in return. He said Peters has already turned over the roster. More than half of the roster from week 18 last year is gone, and there's no reason to stop now. I completely agree. But then I heard about the fact that they were trying to trade John Ridgeway, and this was the most surprising out of any of the three that we're going to talk about today between Cole Turner, John Ridgeway, and Ricky Stromberg. The John Ridgeway one definitely caught me off guard the most. I'm actually pretty confused about this one. It makes sense when you look at it from a certain angle. We're going to dive into that. But initially, when I first heard about this, I was actually pretty shocked. I was like, wow. So shouts out to Mark Bullock. He brings up a good point. He said Dan Quinn has mentioned Phidarian Mathis a couple of times in camp, so they clearly like him, who is likely fighting for the same roster spot as John Ridgeway. And that makes sense because like Johnny Newton, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, they're 3-tech defensive tackles. You even see KJ Henry at times coming in, instead of being a 5-tech edge, he's coming in as a 3-tech defensive tackle. Basically like the new version of FL Bada that can do both, basically. But Phidarian Mathis and John Ridgeway are pure nose tackles, in my opinion. They're 0-techs. They eat up double teams between a center and one of the other guards. They usually happen to like pretty much eat up 2 blockers and allow everybody else to get one-on-ones and free up the linebackers. That's their job. Primarily the run stop, but some pass rush upside there as well. But so, I mean, it makes sense that like maybe they have to choose between one of the two rather than keeping both. Even though I feel like Phidarian Mathis can play a little bit of 3-tech, so I didn't feel like they were necessarily stepping on each other's toes that bad. But hey, I definitely feel like maybe they were fighting for the same roster spot. But at the same time, Mark Bullock brings up a great point. I'd go for Ridgeway personally, but Dan Quinn was a part of the Cowboys organization that cut him originally. Remember, the only reason we have Ridgeway was because he was drafted, I believe, as like a 5th-round rookie. And before he even got to the regular season of his rookie year, the Cowboys tried to cut him and sneak him onto the practice squad. And we identified that, we saw that, we scouted it, and then we made sure we grabbed him. And then thank goodness we did, because he ended up being one of our better defensive tackles, defensive linemen out of the entire season last year. So I'm really happy that we made that move. But at the same time, maybe Dan Quinn just doesn't like him. The Cowboys, for some reason, cut him when he was with them. Now Dan Quinn comes here to be their head coach and to our head coach, and now we're trying to trade him. So maybe it's a Dan Quinn thing. Maybe Dan Quinn doesn't like him personally. I don't know what's going on. And me personally, I feel like you keep Ridgeway no matter what. That's just me. Like whether you keep Phidarian Mathis or not, whether you want to have 2 nose tackles or 1, I feel like no matter what, Ridgeway should be one of the guys you keep, no matter what you plan on doing with Phidarian Mathis. Like, why would you trade him away? Now, obviously, the answer to that is draft picks. You can for sure get a higher draft pick right now for John Ridgeway than Phidarian Mathis. But this does show that they are for sure prioritizing building towards the future rather than building to basically make a team as good as possible this year. Like the goal is not to win a Super Bowl this year at all. They are building towards the future. Give me whatever draft capital you got for Jahan Dotson, for potentially John Ridgeway, Cole Turner, Ricky Stromberg, and then hopefully we can turn those draft picks into good players that can help us win later rather than help us win right now, because we're talking about 2025 draft picks that they won't even see the field until 2025. So they're clearly not as focused on winning right now as I thought they potentially would be. Now, I'm happy that they are far more concerned about what the future holds for this team, but I am a little shocked that they are willing to just even just offensive line-wise, all kinds of things. It's just like, I guess we'll see what happens there. And whoa, breaking news. We're apparently waiving KJ Henry. Now, that one caught me off guard. I thought KJ Henry was way up on the depth chart. That is super surprising. Woo, we're going to have to come back. We're going to have to revisit that one, man. Let me go ahead and make that tab right there so we can get back to that. We'll get back to that on my notes. We got to continue talking about Phidarian Mathis and John Ridgeway right now. But whoa, that I didn't expect that one bit at all. That is That's actually pretty crazy. I'm shocked. I thought he played well enough to where I thought it was literally Cleveland Farrell, Dorrance Armstrong, just starting edge rushers, and KJ Henry right behind them. It seems like if you had a great game against the Patriots, I guess the opposite effect happened. They want to cut you. They want to trade you. You saw Martavis Bryant had a good game. He's about to get cut and everything. I don't know what happened. Now, going back to John Ridgeway, again, my point is they're clearly building towards the future instead of building right now. Because there's just no other way. I mean, you can't watch the last regular season or this preseason and say that Phidarian Mathis is better than John Ridgeway. You just can't. Now, don't get me wrong. Even though Phidarian Mathis did have a terrible 2023 regular season and wasn't very impressive throughout the entirety of training camp, he had 2 great games in the preseason against the Dolphins and then the Patriots back-to-back. And the Patriots one may be his best one yet. But even on his best day, John Ridgeway still outperformed him, in my opinion. Both Phidarian Mathis and KJ Henry had great games against the starting Patriots O-line, and now KJ Henry is apparently cut as well. But Ridgeway was even more dominant. So this whole situation is confusing. But the KJ Henry one is just completely rewiring my brain. I can't even concentrate on the John Ridgeway and Phidarian Mathis point. And so now, though, I'm thinking that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn probably loved the game that John Ridgeway had, because we all did. He was dominant, especially what he did against the Patriots, but not because of how great he can be for this team, but for how much his trade value probably went up after that game. I mean, they were probably doing like the Birdman's rubbing his hands off that performance, or like the Mr. Burns excellent or whatever, excellent. But then I question, how much can your trade value really increase in a preseason game, honestly, though? Like, at the end of the day, like, how much does trade value go up based on what he did against a terrible Patriots starting offensive line? But I guess we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm very confident when I say that Ridgeway is the better of the two between him and Phidarian Mathis, but maybe they just saw Phidarian develop enough to be able to, just trade away the other one that has the better trade value right now, and then hope that Phidarian Mathis continues to develop into somebody that is just as good at Ridgeway just later on down the line one day. Because, I mean, right now, think about it. Just think about like this scenario. Today, Phidarian probably wouldn't even go for a sack lunch in a trade right now. But Ridgeway could go for something, I feel like. Maybe not like a mid-rounder, but at least something draft pick-wise. But let's say best case scenario, Phidarian Mathis eventually becomes as good as John Ridgeway, then you would have traded the guy who had the best value at that time a while ago when the iron was hot, as of today, basically. And then the other guy ended up being just as good later on down the road. So that's basically maximizing your overall value in the situation. I'm assuming they're looking at that best case scenario right there. And then shouts out to Jeremy Fowler for letting us know that the Commanders' new regime is looking forward to move on from past draft picks, including Ricky Stromberg is another name to watch. And John Com tweeted that John Ridgeway, another name to watch here as well. Teams have been calling about him. So just to let you know, teams are calling about John Ridgeway. It's not even like we're necessarily calling other teams, so that shows that there is some value there. I would be shocked if we don't trade him for something. I feel like at this point, there's like a minimum amount of trade value that we're going to trade him for, and then we're just allowing other teams to kind of outbid each other to see what we could end up getting out of him, like the most value we could potentially get. So I think John Ridgeway is going to end up getting traded. If there's a market out there for him, if other teams are calling us about him, that's interesting. But now, moving on to the whole Ricky Stromberg situation, and I'm not going to sit here and act like we are just trading away generational players. But I do feel like Stromberg is better than somebody that we're going to end up keeping deep on this 53-man roster in the depth chart, interior offensive line-wise. But maybe it's the same logic as the Ridgeway and Mathis situation. But, of course, to like a way lesser extent. Like, John Ridgeway has been a way better D-tackle than Stromberg has been an interior offensive lineman. But still, I like Ricky Stromberg. It could be, I mean, maybe I'm just overthinking this, and maybe they just don't think he's good enough to make it on a 53-man roster, just period. Even with all of the injuries to the O-line, they're probably just cool with dangling him out there for other teams to potentially get him. And if he clears waivers, then they'll be more than happy to bring him back to the practice squad. But then again, if they're trying to trade him, there must be some value and some market out there for him. You're not just going out there and just assuming you can potentially trade somebody if there isn't some interest out there. Because then at that point, he would never clear waivers. If we were to cut him, he would never clear waivers at that point. So I'm going to keep y'all updated on that. That's really interesting. But just to let you know, right now, if you're keeping an updated list, we have center Ricky Stromberg, 2023 third round pick. Tight end Cole Turner, 2022 fifth-round pick, and defensive tackle John Ridgeway, a 2022 fifth-round pick. And let's go ahead and throw KJ Henry in there as well as guys that they are trying to, well, KJ Henry's getting cut. That's insane to me. The other three guys are getting traded. Also, just to let you know, the Commanders released the wide receiver Martavis Bryant. I wasn't necessarily shocked by that, but it does bring up a good point that, like, maybe that third preseason game does not mean as much as as people assume. Dan Quinn did say, like, over a week ago, though, that it's like what you've done throughout the entire training camp. It's not just one game. That third preseason game is not like a final exam that counts for 80% of your grade. It's all graded equally throughout the whole process. And I guess Martavis Bryant waited too long to show up and have a good game. I don't know. But he did have that forced fumble against the Dolphins last week. So I don't know, but Burgundy Blog brings up a good point. Martavis Bryant did like 4 or 5 excellent things on Sunday against the Patriots. And so we basically annually oversell the importance of that preseason finale. It doesn't hold as much weight as we thought, I guess, because Martavis Bryant had a good game. And I'm assuming that they would love to bring him back if he does clear waivers to bring him back to the practice squad, but we'll see. Also, shouts out to David Harrison because he brings up a good point as well, that this means that maybe Bryson Tremaine, they're going to keep him over Martavis Bryant because they're pretty much just like how John Ridgeway and Fedarian Mathis, you could say that they're both competing for the same one spot as like the only real nose tackles we have on this roster. Well, before we started cutting people. Martavis Bryant and Bryson Tremaine are like our only big receivers. Luke McCaffrey is 6'2", and he's our tallest receiver outside of Martavis Bryant and Bryson Tremaine. And then you have Martavis Bryant and Bryson Tremaine, who are like 6'4", going on to almost 6'5"-ish guys that are like the big body red zone receiver threats and things like that. So they're potentially, they've been fighting for the same one spot. You probably don't keep both. And now that we're cutting Martavis Bryant, maybe that means Bryson Tremaine is safe. And I've been rooting for Bryson Tremaine, but that's not a guarantee that they'll keep him. They'll probably just go with a whole bunch of small, shifty wide receivers again. And then we saw that we were cutting wide receiver Mitchell Tinsley. Then they said they were cutting quarterback Sam Hartman, even though I feel like that's obviously, like, if he clears waivers, they would be glad to bring him back on the practice squad. But due to the fact that he's been hurt and he was already 4th on the QB depth chart, he was behind Jaden Daniels, Marcus Mariota, and Jeff Driscoll even before he got hurt. And then the injury didn't help. He was dealing with a shoulder injury and he was getting back healthy, but he didn't even get to play in the previous preseason game against the Patriots. So I was not surprised by this cut at all. So that makes sense. They're going to bring him back to the practice squad if nobody else picks him up. And he was an undrafted free agent just this past draft class. So, I mean, granted, we did have to outbid other teams for him, but maybe he will end up on our practice squad. We'll see. I'll keep y'all in tune for that. Then also we cut cornerback Tariq Castro-Fields, and I was a little surprised by that, just by the fact that they already cut Chiggy Anusium as well. But I thought that if it was like Emmanuel, as far as outside corners go, Emmanuel Forrest, Benjamin St-Juste, Michael Davis, I thought immediately behind them on the depth chart was Tariq Castro-Fields. So that was another surprising as well. Like, they've cut other players too that I will not talk about in this video because we'll just basically be here forever. But I'm just trying to mention some of the more notable, like, wow, I'm a little bit surprised by that one. I feel like Tariq Castro-Fields is one of those. Now, granted, he did not have a good game against the Patriots. He had a good game against the Dolphins, but he did not have a good game against the Patriots. So now I'm curious as to, like, who's that 4th outside corner. Some people would say Mike Sanverstill. Some people would even say Mike Sanverstill is our best outside corner already. But let's go ahead and move on. The biggest surprise to me was the fact that we cut KJ Henry. Now let's talk about it. A 2023 5th-round pick has now been cut, and that's another guy I'm hoping that can clear waivers and we end up bringing him into our practice squad. But I doubt it, man. I really do. But just first of all, my immediate thoughts were that Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Jamin Davis have to be happy about that. That sounds like not only is it more likely for them to actually make this team, but I feel like that may be a Rizap. Like, I feel like they're pretty much safe too, because John Ridgeway's gone, and now, well, it looks like he's about to be gone. KJ Henry is officially cut. So I think Jamin Davis actually has an honest shot. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I'm not surprised. You could tell that they liked him. And shouts out to my boy Jamal Atlet Martella, because he brings up a good point. He's got to develop as a pass rusher, get better, got to get off of blocks better and quicker. But he's a smart, disciplined player. Probably practice squad type of guy if he makes it through waivers. But I thought he looked good enough. I mean, Adam Peters clearly hates Ron Rivera draft picks. Like, clearly, man. Even when they do look like good players. But you got to remember, even though I feel like KJ Henry looks better than Javonte Jean-Baptiste this summer. Adam Peters drafted Javonte Jean-Baptiste and did not draft KJ Henry, and it may literally just be that simple, I guess. But I would argue that our best pass rusher this offseason, this preseason at least, specifically the preseason, was KJ Henry. Because a lot of our starters didn't play. I think Dorrance Armstrong maybe gave us one drive out of the entire preseason, and that was that one lone drive against the Jets and the Dolphins in the second preseason game. I think that was it. I don't think we saw Cleveland Farrell, Dante Fowler, Jonathan Allen, any of those guys at any point this entire offseason. So I think KJ Henry played the best out of everybody we threw out there as far as edge rushers go. So I'm a little surprised there. And shouts out to Ryan Fowler because he said edge KJ Henry approved each time he strapped up in Washington. Lunch pail type of worker that showed up each time snaps were presented. 3 games in his rookie campaign with multiple pressures and finished the 24th season with 10 pressures and 9 hurries, which led the NFL. Someone will get a player. Hopefully it's us. I'm shocked because I feel like he's one of those guys that's only getting better, but we'll see what happens. But before we move on to some of the guys that were cut by other teams that we may want to look into, I need to let y'all talk to my boy Michael Vick real quick, and I'm going to talk to you right afterwards.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
And you already heard my boy Michael Vick tell you, but now I gotta ask you, are you looking for a new book this football season? It should be BetUS for sure. Stop playing. First of all, they have the fastest payouts in the industry. I know y'all want y'all money fast, and when you sign up through me, you can get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000, or even 200% crypto deposit bonus with your first deposit. Make sure you check out my BetUS link in the description below and the pinned comment of this video as well. I'm telling you, your boy RicoScores is gonna hook you up every time. And if you're looking on the screen right now, we're looking at the Defensive Rookie of the Year odds. Johnny Newton right there, our second round draft pick, even though he's been hurt. They have him 14th right now out of all possible odds for the Defensive Rookie of the Year. This is directly through the BetUS app. Make sure you go sign up and go put in this bet if you're comfortable with it, man, because I'm telling you, this is probably a good bet. He hasn't been healthy yet, but I think he has Pro Bowl defensive tackle written all over him. The only question right now is how soon he will be able to get out there and show that he is that guy. But I don't feel like there's any real runaway favorites for Defensive Rookie of the Year right now. I feel like Johnny Newton, even with his injury, has an honest chance of actually winning it. There's no just this dominant top 5 defensive player draft pick of this. I don't believe a defensive player even went within the first 10, 15 picks, I believe. At least the first 10, I know. So, hey, man, it's open season for that. And Johnny Newton, you may be getting some good value here with plus 3,300 odds. So, make sure you go check that out. I would say go ahead and do that bet. I'm probably going to do it myself. And again, when you sign up through me, you get a 125% sign up bonus through your first 3 deposits up to $2,000, or even a 200% crypto deposit bonus with your first deposit. So make sure you check out my BetUS link in the description and the pinned comment. Really appreciate y'all. Now let's go ahead and dive into the rest of this video. All right, so first of all, I saw the Texans were releasing wide receiver Noah Brown. I was shocked, man. He had 567 receiving yards last season. This is a good receiver. At 6'2", 230 pounds, he's had 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. That is significantly more production in that time frame than any other wide receiver on this roster other than Terry McLaurin. Literally all of them. I mean, we signed him today. He's probably your second best receiver immediately, which is insane. And the fact that the Texans just cut him, y'all can have him for free. We're not even trying to trade him. So that just, I guess, shows you the state of our wide receiver group right now compared to other teams. And one notable thing is, though, that he was in Dallas when Dan Quinn was there. So maybe Dan Quinn has his eye on him. Maybe as a defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, he has a different level of respect for wide receiver Noah Brown for what he was doing against his defense in practices and then, all of that type of stuff. So also shouts out to Rich Manuel because he brings up a good connection as well. He said Noah Brown had his best NFL season under wide receivers coach Robert Prince, who spent several years in Detroit with Lance Newmark and Martin Mayhew, 2 guys in our front office. That's our assistant GM and one of our front office advisors for, draft, team building, free agency, and things like that, and Martin Mayhew. So there's that connection right there. And also, shouts out to Rush Manuel for pointing this out because Terry McLaurin had great things to say about Noah Brown on his work ethic after recovering from an injury in college. And he said, personally, I feel like he was one of the best receivers. Him and Mike Thomas were pretty much unguardable last camp. Fellow wide receiver Terry McLaurin said so back with their days at Ohio State. So Terry McLaurin is very high on him as well. Maybe he puts in a good word. Just to let you know, Noah Brown, Pro Football Focus wise, had a 73 overall grade, which was 42nd in the NFL. And you may think, okay, 42nd, that's not that high. But first of all, that's better than anybody on this team, again, outside of Terry McLaurin. Let's just go ahead and get that out the way. That Terry McLaurin's 35th, according to Pro Football Focus. Noah Brown's 42nd. Under that, you have Garrett Wilson, Adam Thielen, T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Josh Downs, Josh Reynolds. I mean, there are a lot of good receivers after you stop with Noah Brown. You have DeMarcus Robinson, Jacoby Myers, Curtis Samuel, I thought was pretty good for us last year. Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks was pretty decent for the Cowboys last year. Christian Watson, just to name a few. Gabe Davis. I know Jerry Jeudy hasn't lived up to the hype that he had coming out of Alabama, but still. Even Michael Thomas still dealing with the injuries. Marquise Brown. You have Darius Slayton of the Giants. I mean, there are so many receivers. I'm skipping names. Michael Gallup, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. So many. Jamison Williams, who I really wanted coming out of Alabama for the draft. I mean, there's just so many names that I could go off of that. I mean, that's impressive for him to be graded higher than those guys. I know you hear 42nd, but remember there are 32 teams, and he's better than anybody on this team. That I would argue he's better than anybody we have on this roster outside of Terry McLaurin, at least statistically, minimum. I mean, easily statistically, but I feel like even like if we were to sign him, he would probably be your wide receiver 2 immediately, at worst wide receiver 3, but we'll see. Also, the Titans cut former 2021 first-round pick cornerback Caleb Farley. Remember, he was drafted in the first round, 22nd overall, out of Virginia Tech in 2021 to the Tennessee Titans. So fairly a local guy, even though I believe he's from North Carolina. But he went to Virginia Tech, and he was arguably one of the best corners in that draft. You could argue he was the best corner, but he had the injury situations coming out of college. That's the only reason he wasn't drafted even higher than that. He was never able to stay on the field because of a myriad of injury issues since he's been with the Tennessee Titans as well. Farley came into the NFL with concerns about his back already. That's why he was drafted 22nd instead of higher in the first round. But the fact that he had back concerns and still got drafted in the first round shows you what talent and potential he has. But then he tore his ACL as a rookie and missed out the entire 22 season, most of the 22 season, and then all of the 2023 season, especially after the back issues came back to haunt him again. So this is a guy with injury concerns, big time injury concerns. But I'm telling you, and this is why I want to give you this warning, teams will try anything to get value out of every move that they make. So there must be a reason that they are willing to cut these guys and allowing teams to get them for free instead of trying to trade them for whatever you can get, like we're trying to do with John Ridgeway and Cole Turner and Ricky Stromberg. But it just simply has not worked out for him, man. I know he was a first round pick just a couple of years ago, but it just at the NFL level it hasn't worked out. I mean, since we are technically in a rebuild, though, and we are clearly already prioritizing draft capital over players and prioritizing building towards the future over, trying to win right now, maybe they can take a flyer in a low risk, high reward chance on a guy like this and hope that with a new situation, and I would assume they feel like they have the better coaching staff and hopefully a better medical staff for the injuries that he's dealing with. I could see them potentially trying to bring him in and with the idea of bringing out that first round talent out of him at some point. Who knows? But I don't want to lead the movement of Commanders fans trying to sign every former high round draft pick that ends up getting cut today. But I feel like those are two notable ones that we should definitely pay attention to. I mean, we can't forget how much of a freak athlete this guy was. He never got the chance to actually test at the combine, but you saw it on his college tape. But he did, for what he did, get tested for his measurables. I mean, elite size and length. I mean, according to his relative athletic score, again, even though he didn't get to do anything else, he has an elite composite size grade at 6'1", basically like 210 pounds. He also had a 95th percentile arm length for cornerback. So this is a guy that he has certain traits you can't teach. Now, we got to get him back healthy if we were to sign him, but that's a very impressive athletic specimen right there with some potential to him if we really wanted to go that route. Also, the Saints released veteran offensive lineman Shane Lemieux, and shouts out to Linnell Willingham for pointing out the fact that he did work with our offensive lines coach Bobby Johnson back at their time for the New York Giants. So even though I'm not really interested in Shane Lemieux like that, that's an interesting connection there that be on the lookout for. Maybe we're interested in that guy just because of his prior history with a coach that's on our coaching staff. And then lastly, before we get up out of here in really random news, just, For those of y'all that are still holding out hope for Brandon Ayuk, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's likely going to happen. But there was an update today that the 49ers are currently $38.9 million over the cap for 2025. And that's not counting a potential Brandon Ayuk extension, a potential Brock Purdy extension, and a potential Trent Williams renegotiation right now because he's holding out. So they're completely strapped for money right now. And it's just not looking good for their chances of potentially signing Brandon Ayuk long term. So this doesn't necessarily mean we're going to trade for him, but be on the lookout. Maybe 2025 free agency, maybe we go and take a look at him then. Yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I'm going to keep y'all updated on everything. Of course, I will do a full-blown reaction breakdown, position group by position group, of the final 53-man rosters they come out with. And of course, if by the time I'm recording the video, they already have the finalized practice squad, we're going to analyze that as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. How do you feel about them trying to trade away John Ridgeway, but potentially keeping Fidarian Mathis? How do you feel about them just straight up cutting KJ Henry? How do you feel about them trying to trade away Ricky Stromberg and Cole Turner? All of the cuts that I've given you so far, there are a lot of other ones, but a lot of the other ones aren't very surprising, so that's why I didn't cover them in this video. We'll probably talk about them in my final reaction to what the 53-man roster ended up being. And also let me know how you feel about us potentially maybe trying to target wide receiver Noah Brown, who was cut by the Texans, and cornerback Caleb Farley, who was cut by the Titans. Let me know if you're interested in those guys, if you feel like we should give those guys a shot. Noah Brown for the recent production and Caleb Farley for the ceiling, the potential that he has of being a former first-round pick fairly recently. And yeah, man, I really appreciate y'all. Of course, remember, if you don't remember anything else, please make sure y'all gamble responsibly, man. This video was sponsored by BetUS and Sportsbook. I want y'all to remember to gamble responsibly. I really appreciate y'all. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.